For over a century, three shepherd children claim to have received a prophecy powerful enough to alter the fate of all humanity. Yet what the Vatican revealed was only the tip of the iceberg. The hidden part of that prophecy remains locked away in the shadows of Rome, guarded by walls that have stood for centuries. Who is concealing the truth? And why is that truth so dangerous it could shake the faith of millions? Welcome to KTK History, where we take you deep into forgotten journeys, uncover the truths left behind, and explore the mysteries of history that no one dares to tell. Join us now as we investigate the secret of Fatima, one of the most closely guarded conspiracies in the history of the Vatican. The spring of 1917 cast a quiet, almost haunting calm over the hills of Fatima, a small village hidden among the rugged terrain of Portugal. Far from the battlefields that raged across Europe during the First World War, Fatima seemed like a world apart, an unremarkable speck on the map, where time passed slowly and each day mirrored the last. But on one fateful afternoon, the ordinary lives of three children and the destiny of millions would be forever changed. On May 13th, Lucia dos Santos, 10 years old, and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, 9 and 7, were tending their family's sheep in a field known as Cova da Iria. The sun was high, the sky unbroken blue. Suddenly, a flash of light erupted from above, seizing their attention and freezing them where they stood. Within the radiance, a figure appeared, a lady dressed in brilliant white, brighter than any sunlight they had ever seen. She spoke without moving her lips, her voice resonating inside their minds rather than through their ears. This figure identified herself simply as the Lady of the Rosary. What she told them would set in motion one of the greatest mysteries in modern religious history. Her words spoke of impending tragedies and urgent calls for prayer. She warned that unless humanity repented, war and suffering would multiply beyond imagination. She also entrusted the children with three secrets, visions so startling they would fuel a century of speculation and fear. Almost immediately, whispers of the children's vision spread from farm to village, from village to city. In a Portugal governed by a fiercely anti-clerical regime, any mention of divine intervention was viewed with hostility. Reports soon reached the local authorities, who saw the events in Fatima as not only superstition, but a dangerous spark that could ignite religious fervor. The three children were summoned for questioning. Official records reveal that they were threatened, even detained, but none of them wavered. Their testimonies remained consistent, their descriptions unshaken despite fear and confusion. Meanwhile, as word spread, pilgrims began to arrive in Fatima. At first dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, gathering each month on the 13th, the date the lady had promised to return. They braved harsh weather, muddy roads, and threats from officials determined to suppress what they labeled as hysteria. Newspapers, both religious and secular, dispatched reporters to cover what was quickly becoming an international sensation. Journalists who expected a simple story of mass delusion instead found themselves recording testimonies that defied explanation. All of this culminated on October 13th, when over 70,000 people converged on the Cova da Iria. The day began with heavy rain, the sky a swirling mass of gray clouds. Then, as the children fell to their knees, the storm stopped abruptly, and a gap appeared in the clouds. Witnesses reported the sun emerging as a brilliant disk, spinning in the sky, radiating colors of red, yellow, and purple. Many swore the sun appeared to plunge toward the earth before rising again. Mud-soaked clothing dried in seconds, and the crowd was left in stunned silence. The event would become known as the miracle of the sun, a phenomenon that even skeptical reporters admitted they could not rationally dismiss. But what many did not realize at the time was that the greatest mystery was not the spectacle in the sky. It was what the children claimed they had been told in secret. A series of prophecies that included a dire warning of a Second World War, visions of immense suffering, and a final revelation so severe that the Vatican itself would later keep it locked away. From that day forward, Fatima would no longer be just a quiet village. It became a symbol of hope, fear, and conspiracy. It also became the starting point of a mystery that would pull popes, governments, and countless believers into a search for answers that, to this day, remain carefully hidden behind the ancient doors of the Vatican. In the days following the final apparition at Fatima, the children began to speak of 3 secrets that the Lady of the Rosary had entrusted to them. These 3 prophecies would soon become the center of fascination, controversy, and fear for generations to come. Though the children revealed the first 2 secrets not long after the events of 1917, the 3rd secret would remain sealed for more than 80 years, locked away deep within the Vatican archives. The first secret was a vision of hell itself. Lucia described how the lady had shown them a vast sea of fire, filled with screaming souls in agony. They saw hideous shapes, demonic figures, and tortured spirits engulfed in flames. The images were so terrifying that Jacinta and Francisco, both younger and more sensitive, burst into tears and trembled uncontrollably as Lucia struggled to recount what they had witnessed. According to Lucia's memoirs, the lady explained that these were the souls of sinners who had rejected God, and she urged the children to pray fervently for their salvation. For many believers, this vision served as both a wake-up call and a warning. The stakes of human choices were eternal. The second secret carried an ominous prediction. The lady warned that if people did not cease offending God, an even worse conflict would follow the ongoing First World War. She spoke of strange lights appearing in the night sky as a sign that the new war was about to begin. Decades later, many would point to the aurora borealis of January 1938, a vivid blood-red display seen across Europe, as the signal foretelling the outbreak of the Second World War. This second prophecy also included a plea. Russia must be consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, or it would spread its errors across the world, causing wars, persecutions of the Church, and suffering for countless innocents. These 2 secrets alone were more than enough to alarm even the most devout followers. But it was the 3rd secret that would plunge Fatima into a mystery so deep it would span a century. Unlike the first 2, Lucia recorded the 3rd secret in a sealed envelope at the instruction of her bishop. That envelope was delivered to the Vatican, and for years, only a handful of men would lay eyes on what it contained. Speculation grew like wildfire. Some claimed the 3rd secret predicted the assassination of a pope. Others whispered it foretold a great apostasy within the Church itself, a falling away of faith at the highest levels of leadership. Rumors circulated that the secret included a warning of a global cataclysm, a nuclear holocaust or natural disaster of unimaginable scale. The Vatican's refusal to release the third secret only deepened the sense of foreboding. Over the decades, popes and cardinals confirmed they had read it but declined to share its contents with the world. Journalists and historians who tried to uncover the truth were met with silence or vague reassurances that the secret was merely a symbolic vision. Yet even some clergy admitted privately that the contents were too disturbing for the faithful to hear. The secrecy led to countless conspiracy theories. Was the Vatican afraid that revealing the prophecy would undermine its authority or cause panic among believers? Did the secret contain a specific date for the end of the world? Or did it expose a scandal within the Church so devastating that it had to remain hidden at all costs? Meanwhile, Lucia, who had become a nun, lived much of her life in a cloistered convent, away from public view. Visitors who managed to speak with her described a woman carrying a heavy burden, haunted by knowledge she could not fully share. Letters she wrote to church officials hinted at her frustration and fear that the complete message of Fatima was not being told. Some of these letters, released years later, only fueled further questions about what the third secret truly contained. Adding to the enigma, every pope since the apparitions visited or publicly referenced Fatima, each interpreting the message in different ways. Pope Pius XII, who led the Church through the Second World War, reportedly read The Secret and emerged from his private chapel visibly shaken. Pope John Paul II, after surviving an assassination attempt in 1981 on the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, credited the Virgin Mary with saving his life and suggested the third secret contained a prophecy of that very event. Yet when the Vatican finally released what it claimed was the full text of the third secret in 2000, many scholars and Fatima experts noted glaring inconsistencies. The official version described a vision of a bishop in white, gunned down amid a destroyed city filled with corpses. But it included no mention of apostasy, no reference to global catastrophe, and none of the explicit warnings about internal betrayal that had been rumored for decades. Suspicion grew that the Vatican had only released a portion of the text, or had edited it to soften the blow. This uncertainty gave rise to one of the longest-running mysteries in modern religious history. The three secrets of Fatima were no longer simply messages from a Marian apparition. They became the center of a clash between faith and power, hope and fear, and the enduring question of whether humanity is ever ready to hear the unfiltered truth about its fate. The third secret of Fatima remains one of the most puzzling and haunting mysteries in modern religious history. Unlike the first two prophecies, which were dramatic yet clear, the third secret was immediately enveloped in a fog of secrecy. It became a puzzle that would consume theologians, historians, journalists, and countless believers. And at the center of this enigma lay a single sealed envelope, delivered to the Vatican in 1944, containing Lucia's handwritten words. From the very beginning, the Vatican treated the third secret with extraordinary caution. Popes read it in private, high-ranking cardinals glimpsed its contents, but the faithful were left only with rumors. Some priests close to the events claimed the secret warned of a deep betrayal within the Church itself, a loss of faith among those tasked with preserving it. Others insisted the text described apocalyptic images of entire nations, reduced to ashes, a vision so horrific it would spark global panic if revealed. As the Cold War deepened, speculation intensified. In a world trembling at the prospect of nuclear annihilation, the idea that the Virgin Mary might have foreseen a man-made apocalypse resonated with both believers and skeptics. Books, pamphlets, and lectures flourished across Europe and the Americas, each claiming to offer insight into the hidden words of Lucia's letter. But every claim only deepened the fog, because the Vatican's official stance was absolute silence. In the 1960s, Pope John XXIII was presented with the third secret. According to private testimonies from those close to him, he read it and declared it was not for his time. He placed the envelope back into the archives, locked it away, and left the world to wonder what could be so shocking that even the highest authority in the Catholic Church deemed humanity unprepared to hear it. Pope Paul VI followed a similar path, reading the secret in the tense days of the Cold War. Again, the decision was made to keep the contents hidden, citing fears that revealing them would lead to despair rather than conversion. These decisions only fueled theories that the secret described a devastating internal crisis, a possibility many found more terrifying than any physical catastrophe. When Pope John Paul II was nearly killed in an assassination attempt on May 13, 1981, the anniversary of the first Fatima apparition, the sense of connection between the secret and real-world events exploded into public consciousness. Lying in the hospital, John Paul reportedly requested to read the third secret again. After his recovery, he traveled to Fatima, thanking the Virgin Mary for saving his life. Many began to speculate that the secret had foretold this attempt on the Pope's life, but the Vatican's silence continued, deepening the sense of a prophecy partially fulfilled yet still incomplete. Throughout the 80s and 90s, demands for the secret's publication grew louder. Journalists pressed cardinals for answers, scholars combed archives for clues, and lay organizations circulated petitions urging the Vatican to release the full text. Meanwhile, Lucia, now Sister Lucia, living in a Carmelite convent, was increasingly shielded from interviews. Those who managed to communicate with her described a woman burdened with knowledge she could never freely share. Her letters hinted at frustration, even sorrow, that the complete message had not been told. The Vatican's partial disclosure in 2000, under Pope John Paul II, was intended to quell the rising tide of speculation. The text they released described a vision of a bishop dressed in white, walking through a devastated city filled with corpses before being shot by soldiers. A scene of angels collecting the blood of martyrs concluded the message. The Vatican declared the prophecy fulfilled in the assassination attempt on John Paul and presented it as a symbolic warning rather than a literal forecast. Yet almost immediately, leading Fatima scholars and even some within the church pointed out glaring problems. The released text made no mention of a crisis of faith or internal betrayal, elements repeatedly referenced by those who claim to have read the secret firsthand. The language of the vision was ambiguous, lacking the direct, stark warnings found in the first two secrets. Critics also noted inconsistencies in the length of the text compared to Lucia's other writings, raising the possibility that part of the message had been withheld. One of the most intriguing accounts came from Cardinal Mario Luigi Ciappi, a theologian who served as personal papal advisor under several popes. In private conversations later documented by historians, he suggested that the Third Secret warned of an apostasy starting from the top, implying that the loss of faith would begin within the hierarchy of the Church itself. Such a message, if revealed, could have devastating effects on the faithful, sowing distrust in their spiritual leaders. Further complicating the mystery were reports of another sealed envelope, distinct from the one made public, stored in the archives of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Some insiders claimed this second envelope contained an explicit message from the Virgin Mary about divisions within the Church, or even a warning of a future pope who would lead the faithful astray. These rumors found new life when photographs surfaced of Sister Lucia's handwritten original, revealing a document longer than the Vatican's published version. Though the authenticity of the photographs was never officially confirmed, they provided fertile ground for theorists who believed that the true Third Secret remains hidden to this day. Meanwhile, Fatima itself became more than a site of Marian devotion. It became a symbol of the tension between faith and power, truth and secrecy. Pilgrims who journey to the Cova da Iria often speak of feeling both awe and unease, as if the peace of the holy place stands in contrast with the unresolved questions that linger over its history. Today, the Third Secret of Fatima stands as a chilling reminder that some truths are deemed too dangerous to share. Whether it warns of spiritual collapse, a cataclysmic war, or something far more insidious, its full contents remain one of the most closely guarded mysteries in the modern Church. And as long as the Vatican refuses to open every page of Lucia's message to the world, the question will remain: what was so terrifying that even the popes decided the faithful could never hear it? In the year 2000, after more than 8 decades of speculation, the Vatican finally announced it would release the long-awaited Third Secret of Fatima. The decision came during the papacy of John Paul II, who had long been associated with Fatima, particularly after surviving the assassination attempt on May 13, 1981. The Church framed this disclosure as a gift for the Jubilee year, promising to resolve one of the most persistent and unsettling mysteries in modern Catholic history. The Vatican statement arrived with solemnity and careful choreography. Cardinal Angelo Sodano, the Vatican Secretary of State, declared that the Third Secret pertained to the 20th century's great trials, including wars, persecutions, and the attack on John Paul himself. Soon after, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, then prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, presented the text that the Vatican insisted was the complete Third Secret. The release document described a vision of a bishop dressed in white walking through a city in ruins, filled with corpses. This bishop, along with other clergy, is shown climbing a steep mountain only to be gunned down by soldiers at the summit. Angels gather the blood of martyrs beneath a cross. The imagery was grim, but the Vatican explained it as symbolic, representing the struggles of the Church during the violent 20th century. In particular, they linked the bishop in white to John Paul II and his brush with death in St. Peter's Square. To many Catholics, this official release seemed to bring closure. The connection to the assassination attempt appeared clear, and the Vatican's interpretation offered a sense of comfort. The worst had passed, and the prophecy was fulfilled. Pilgrims continued to visit Fatima in greater numbers, and the shrine became a global center of Marian devotion, attracting millions who sought healing, hope, and peace. Yet for others, the Vatican's disclosure raised more questions than it answered. Scholars noted that the text lacked the specificity and direct warnings that had characterized the first two secrets. Instead of a prophecy predicting clear events, the vision was vague, symbolic, and open to wide interpretation. Even among those predisposed to trust the Vatican, doubts began to surface. Journalists who had investigated Fatima for years pointed to repeated testimonies from clergy who claimed the third secret included warnings about an internal crisis of faith. Nowhere in the released text did such warnings appear. Additionally, the official document's brevity contrasted sharply with reports describing Lucia's letter as longer and more detailed. Critics argued that the Vatican might have chosen to reveal only a portion of the secret or edited the text to avoid panic. Adding to the unease was the tone of the Vatican's commentary. In accompanying documents, Cardinal Ratzinger emphasized that private revelations like Fatima were not essential to the faith, and he cautioned against focusing too heavily on apocalyptic predictions. To some, this read like an attempt to downplay Fatima's significance and discourage deeper inquiry. Meanwhile, Sister Lucia, elderly and in declining health, was allowed to make brief, controlled public statements supporting the Vatican's interpretation. But those who had followed her life noted how rarely she had been allowed to speak freely in recent decades. Critics suggested that pressure had been placed upon her to confirm the official narrative, even if it left crucial details unspoken. For many believers, the Vatican's release failed to settle the matter. Instead, it amplified suspicion that powerful forces within the Church had chosen to keep the most troubling parts of the prophecy hidden. Authors, documentary filmmakers, and conspiracy theorists seized upon these doubts, proposing that the unrevealed portion of the third secret contained dire warnings of schism, apostasy, or even the fall of Rome itself. Today, the Vatican's official version of the third secret stands as both a revelation and a source of ongoing debate. While it offered a vision of tragedy and perseverance, it left an unmistakable sense of something missing. And as long as questions linger about what the children of Fatima truly heard, and what the Virgin Mary truly said, the mystery will continue to cast its long, unsettling shadow over the history of the Church. From the moment the Vatican released its official version of the third secret in the year 2000, waves of controversy spread across both religious and secular communities. For many, what was shared seemed strangely incomplete. The third secret, long rumored to contain grave warnings of crisis within the Church, appeared to offer only a symbolic vision of martyrdom. This absence of explicit warnings about spiritual collapse or internal betrayal sparked one of the most enduring conspiracies in modern Catholic history. That part of the secret remains hidden to this day. One of the earliest and most striking challenges to the Vatican's version came from theologians who had studied Fatima for decades. They noted that multiple witnesses, including bishops and priests who had spoken with Sister Lucia before the Vatican's official release, reported that the third secret contained references to a coming apostasy, a loss of faith beginning at the highest levels of the Church. These accounts described language starkly different from the vague imagery published by the Vatican. Among the most frequently cited figures was Cardinal Mario Luigi Ciappi, a respected papal theologian who served under several popes. According to testimonies recorded after his death, Ciappi confided that the Third Secret warned of apostasy in the Church, starting from the top. Such a statement suggested not only a spiritual crisis, but one that could involve corruption or betrayal among the hierarchy itself, something potentially explosive if made public. These claims gained further traction when photographs and reports emerged, indicating that the original letter Sister Lucia wrote was longer than the document the Vatican disclosed. Observers pointed to handwriting samples and descriptions of the envelope's size to argue that the published text was incomplete. Though Vatican officials rejected these allegations, they did little to dispel the growing sense that something essential had been left out. Adding to the intrigue were repeated statements by high-ranking clergy that contradicted the official narrative. Archbishop Loris Capovilla, secretary to Pope John XXIII, hinted in later interviews that there were two texts associated with the Third Secret, one that contained the published vision and another that included words of explanation, potentially the very warnings of internal strife so many believed were missing. Some historians have argued that the Cold War context of the mid-20th century may have influenced the Vatican's decision to withhold parts of the prophecy. At a time when the world stood on the brink of nuclear war and the Church sought to maintain stability in the face of communism's spread, revealing a prophecy about corruption or collapse within the Vatican itself could have caused unprecedented chaos. Others have suggested that the unreleased portion might contain not only warnings of apostasy, but also predictions of geopolitical upheavals, natural disasters, or moral decay that could undermine the faithful's trust in their leaders. By keeping such revelations secret, Church authorities could prevent mass panic, but at the cost of deepening suspicion among believers already struggling with crises of faith. In the years after the official release, alternative theories flourished. Some writers claimed the Third Secret foresaw the resignation of a pope under mysterious circumstances. Others speculated it predicted a future schism that would divide the Church into competing factions, or the emergence of a false leader who would mislead millions. These theories, while impossible to prove, reflected a profound sense of unease that the Vatican's explanation had failed to resolve. Meanwhile, Sister Lucia herself remained largely silent. Though she issued carefully worded statements affirming the Vatican's version, those who knew her best described a woman constrained by obedience and advancing age, unable to fully articulate what she had once been so desperate to share. Letters she wrote in earlier decades hinted at a deep concern for the state of the Church and the salvation of souls, concerns many saw echoed in the alleged missing warnings of the Third Secret. Adding another layer of complexity were allegations of a secret alliance within the Vatican, a so-called Sankt Gallen group, or other informal circles, accused by some of manipulating papal elections and doctrinal decisions behind the scenes. Critics argued that if the Third Secret had truly warned of infiltration or moral corruption, those involved in such networks would have a powerful motive to keep the full message buried forever. Fatima scholars pointed to Sister Lucia's repeated insistence in private conversations that the Virgin Mary's words were meant for the entire world, not only the Church hierarchy. This conviction clashed with the Vatican's decades-long decision to keep the Third Secret confined to a select few. To many, it seemed clear that the heart of the controversy was not only about what the secret said, but about who had the right to hear it. For modern pilgrims who journey to Fatima, these mysteries remain as present as the candles flickering at the shrine. They come seeking healing, comfort, or signs of hope, but they also leave with lingering questions. Was the third secret truly revealed in its entirety? Did it contain warnings of a spiritual crisis that still looms ahead? And most haunting of all, what if the prophecy's most devastating messages have yet to unfold? Today, the debate continues not only in hushed conversations among the faithful, but also in books, documentaries, and online forums that keep the mystery alive. Fatima's story, instead of closing with the Vatican's revelation, has grown into a labyrinth of uncertainty, where every answer seems to lead to another question. As long as shadows of doubt surround the third secret, the world will continue to wonder. What was the Virgin Mary's final warning? And why is the Church so determined to keep it hidden? In the years following the apparitions at Fatima, Sister Lucia dos Santos became the central figure in one of the most extraordinary and controversial stories in modern religious history. As the only surviving visionary beyond childhood, she alone carried the full knowledge of the three secrets entrusted by the Lady of the Rosary. While the world speculated, argued, and theorized, Lucia lived much of her life behind the thick walls of a cloistered convent, a silent guardian of a prophecy that many believed could change the course of history. After the early deaths of Francisco and Jacinta, victims of the 1918 influenza pandemic, Lucia's path diverged dramatically. Recognizing the gravity of her experience, church authorities guided her into a life of religious seclusion. She became a Dorothean sister before entering the Carmelite order, where she took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. This obedience would come to define her life, binding her to the instructions of her superiors and the Vatican itself. Over the decades, Lucia's ability to speak freely about the secrets was increasingly limited. Officially, she was allowed to write memoirs that described the first two secrets and offered reflections on her childhood encounters with the Virgin Mary. Yet when it came to the third secret, every word she wrote or spoke was carefully monitored. Requests for interviews from journalists or historians were often denied or filtered through layers of church bureaucracy. Even bishops who attempted to meet her described the process as highly controlled, requiring permission from multiple levels of church hierarchy. Letters Lucia sent to trusted clergy and friends, later revealed, suggest that she carried a heavy burden of knowledge. In these writings, she often expressed sorrow over the state of the world and concern for the salvation of souls. She also hinted at profound truths yet to be shared, intensifying suspicions that the Vatican's version of the third secret was incomplete. In the 1940s, after years of pressure from church authorities, Lucia finally committed the third secret to paper. She wrote it by hand, sealed it in an envelope, and entrusted it to the Bishop of Leiria, who eventually delivered it to the Vatican. The secrecy surrounding this envelope was immediate and absolute. Popes read it in private, while the faithful waited anxiously for its disclosure. Lucia, meanwhile, was ordered not to discuss its contents publicly, creating a silence that lasted the rest of her life. Visitors who did manage to see Lucia described a woman of deep faith and gentle demeanor. but also a figure marked by a quiet intensity. Her eyes, they said, seemed to carry the weight of a truth too heavy for words. In rare conversations allowed by her superiors, Lucia reaffirmed her devotion to the message of Fatima and the importance of prayer and penance. Yet when questions turned to the specifics of the third secret, her answers became carefully measured or entirely absent. In the final decades of her life, Sister Lucia became a symbol of both devotion and mystery. Pilgrims looked to her as the last living link to Fatima's miracles, while skeptics viewed her silence as proof of a conspiracy to hide the Virgin's final warning. Each appearance she made, whether in a brief photograph or a carefully worded statement, fueled further speculation. Even the Vatican seemed to acknowledge Lucia's unique role. Popes wrote to her, visited her convent, and referenced her in public addresses. Pope John Paul II, who credited the Virgin of Fatima with saving his life, held a special connection to Lucia, corresponding with her multiple times. Yet, despite these gestures, the Church maintained tight control over her access to the outside world. As Lucia aged, concerns grew among Fatima scholars that the full truth might die with her. Rumors spread of secret meetings, of Lucia begging church leaders to reveal everything she had recorded, and of her frustration at seeing only part of the message made public. Though these stories remain unconfirmed, they reflect the atmosphere of tension and mistrust that surrounded Fatima long after the original apparitions. When Sister Lucia passed away in February 2005 at the age of 97, she left behind a church still divided over the third secret. Her funeral drew thousands of mourners, from cardinals and dignitaries to humble pilgrims who believed they were saying farewell to the last person who truly knew what the Virgin Mary had revealed at Fatima. Yet even in death, Lucia's presence loomed large. Some claimed she left private writings that have yet to be published. Others suggested she may have given verbal testimony to trusted clergy, recording details of the prophecy the world has never heard. These possibilities keep alive the idea that the real third secret, or at least parts of it, remains sealed somewhere in the Vatican archives. Today, Sister Lucia's life is both an inspiration and a source of lingering questions. To many, she exemplifies humble obedience and unwavering faith in the face of extraordinary experiences. To others, she represents a lost opportunity to reveal a truth that could have prepared humanity for future trials. Her silence, chosen or imposed, has become as much a part of the Fatima mystery as the visions themselves. As pilgrims stand before Lucia's simple grave in Coimbra, they pray not only for her soul, but for clarity, hoping that someday the secrets she carried will come fully to light, and the world will finally understand the true message of Fatima. More than a century has passed since 3 shepherd children first claimed to receive visions from the Lady of the Rosary on the quiet hills of Fatima. While the first 2 secrets delivered vivid and terrifying predictions of hell, war, and the need for repentance, the third secret has remained a puzzle that refuses to be solved. Even today, despite the Vatican's official release of the prophecy in the year 2000, questions persist about what the third secret truly meant, and whether the world has ever heard it in its entirety. One of the greatest sources of confusion lies in the symbolic nature of the vision the Vatican published. Unlike the first 2 secrets, which included direct statements and clear instructions, the third secret's imagery reads more like a dream than a concrete warning. The scene of a bishop in white walking through a ruined city, stepping over corpses, and finally being gunned down by soldiers was interpreted by Vatican officials as a prophecy of the struggles and sufferings of the Church in the 20th century. Yet the lack of precise language left room for endless speculation. Many Fatima scholars argue that the official text does not align with early accounts of the secret. Reports circulated for decades that the third secret included explicit references to a catastrophic loss of faith or to a crisis within the highest ranks of the Church itself. These warnings, if true, would point not merely to external persecution, but to a deep internal collapse, something far more unsettling than the published vision suggested. The symbolic vision also fails to match details in letters and statements attributed to Sister Lucia herself. Before the Vatican released its version, Lucia was quoted by clergy and visitors as saying the third secret involved a spiritual disaster so severe that many faithful would lose confidence in church leadership. This discrepancy between what was rumored and what was revealed has fueled theories that the Vatican either withheld or edited part of the prophecy. Further complicating the mystery are the contrasting reactions of popes who read the secret privately. Pope John the 23rd, upon reading the envelope in 1959, decided not to reveal it, reportedly saying the text did not apply to his time. Pope Paul VI read it in the tense days of the Cold War, but also kept it secret, expressing concerns that its release would cause panic or misunderstanding. These reactions seem inconsistent with the Vatican's later portrayal of the third secret as a symbolic, already fulfilled vision. The Cold War context looms large over the third secret's history. During the mid-20th century, the world stood on the brink of nuclear conflict. The spread of atheistic communism, particularly the Soviet Union's influence, threatened the Church's very existence in Eastern Europe. If the third secret included references to Russia or global cataclysm, it could have been seen as politically explosive, both by communist governments and by Western leaders. This possibility has led some historians to argue that the Vatican's secrecy was less about faith and more about geopolitical stability. Fatima experts have also pointed to the unique relationship between the third secret and the consecration of Russia. In the second secret, the Virgin Mary asked for Russia to be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart, warning that failure to do so would lead to wars and suffering. Critics argue that the third secret may have continued or expanded upon this warning, predicting the consequences of ignoring the Virgin's plea. Since debates continue even today over whether Russia was properly consecrated according to Lucia's instructions, the connection between the secrets remains a source of fierce debate. Even within the Vatican, there appear to have been conflicting views. Some high-ranking officials reportedly favored releasing the secret fully to reinforce calls for repentance, while others feared it would erode trust in church authority. This internal tension, reflected in decades of silence and carefully worded statements, has helped keep the mystery alive long after Sister Lucia's death. For the faithful, the third secret's meaning has become deeply personal. Some see it as a warning that has already been fulfilled through the wars, genocides, and persecutions of the 20th century. Others believe it describes a crisis of faith yet to reach its climax, with signs of division and moral decay appearing inside the Church and society as a whole. These believers look at scandals that have rocked the church in recent decades and wonder if they are living through the realization of a prophecy that still holds terrifying relevance. Adding to the enigma are reports of unpublished documents or alternative texts of the third secret. Rumors persist that Lucia wrote additional explanations that have never been released, or that Vatican archivists discovered multiple versions of the prophecy. Although these claims remain unverified, they reflect the intense desire among the faithful and scholars alike to uncover every piece of the puzzle. The ambiguity of the third secret's language has also inspired countless interpretations beyond the Catholic world. Some suggest it points to a future conflict between civilizations, or a moral collapse leading to widespread chaos. Others view it as an allegory of humanity's self-destructive tendencies, relevant not only to Catholics but to all people facing an uncertain future. Today, Fatima stands as both a place of peace and a symbol of unresolved questions. Each year, millions of pilgrims walk the path where the children once tended sheep, lighting candles and kneeling in prayer. Many find comfort and inspiration in the message of repentance and hope, while others leave haunted by the sense that an essential part of the Virgin's final words remains shrouded in secrecy. Ultimately, the mystery of the third secret endures not only because of what was revealed, but because of what was left unsaid. In the absence of definitive answers, Fatima's story continues to spark debates, inspire faith, and challenge believers to reflect on the fate of the world. As long as doubts linger over the prophecy's true meaning, the third secret will remain one of the most powerful and unsettling enigmas in the history of the Church. A century after 3 shepherd children first claimed to see a radiant lady appear on a quiet Portuguese hillside, Fatima remains one of the most visited Marian shrines in the world. Each year, millions of pilgrims travel from every continent to the sanctuary of Our Lady of Fatima, seeking healing, forgiveness, or answers to questions that have haunted generations. The site's peace and beauty offer comfort, yet the lingering mystery of the third secret continues to cast a long, unsettled shadow over the faithful. For many pilgrims, Fatima is a place of renewal. They light candles along long rows of flickering flames, join processions that fill the night with the sound of hymns, and gather at the chapel of the apparitions to pray at the exact spot where Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta first fell to their knees in awe. They come to express gratitude, ask for miracles, or simply find solace in a world that often feels chaotic and unsteady. Yet not everyone arrives in Fatima with simple devotion. For countless visitors, the unanswered questions surrounding the third secret remain as present as the marble statues and the smell of melting wax. They wonder whether the Virgin's final words have been fully revealed, or if part of the prophecy still waits in silence behind Vatican walls. Many leave with a sense of peace, but others depart with an even deeper curiosity and an uneasy sense of foreboding. The Church itself continues to honor the message of Fatima. Popes since John Paul II have spoken of its importance, visited the shrine, and entrusted the world to the Virgin Mary's protection. The anniversary of the apparitions is marked with masses and global prayers, reaffirming Fatima's significance for the Catholic faithful. Yet while the Vatican has declared the third secret fulfilled and the message of Fatima complete, debates among theologians, historians, and believers show no sign of ending. At the same time, Fatima has taken on a life beyond its religious roots. Scholars study it as a historical phenomenon that shaped 20th century Catholicism. Journalists investigate it as one of the longest-running mysteries in modern times. And for conspiracy theorists, Fatima represents the ultimate symbol of hidden knowledge, a tantalizing secret whose true contents might reveal the fate of the Church or even the world itself. For locals, Fatima has become a city transformed by its past. Shops sell rosaries, statues, and photographs of the three-child visionaries. Hotels and restaurants welcome pilgrims who sometimes arrive by the busload. The economy of the region has grown around the shrine, yet many residents still speak of the apparitions with reverence, passing stories down through generations as both family history and living faith. What endures above all is the power of the Fatima story itself, a message of repentance, prayer, and hope delivered in a time of war and darkness, yet still resonating with people facing the uncertainties of today. Whether visitors come out of devotion, curiosity, or doubt, they all encounter a place that continues to inspire deep reflection on the meaning of faith and the mysteries that lie beyond human understanding. As long as the sanctuary of Fatima stands and pilgrims walk its candlelit paths, the legacy of the secrets entrusted to three humble children will live on, both as a call to conversion and a reminder that some truths may never be fully revealed. The story of Fatima has never truly ended. From the first moments, three shepherd children fell to their knees on a quiet Portuguese hillside, the apparitions and their secrets have echoed through time, leaving questions that refuse to fade. While the Vatican's official release of the third secret was meant to bring closure, it has only deepened the sense of mystery and fueled endless speculation about what the Virgin Mary's final words may have truly contained. Generations of believers, historians, and skeptics alike have been drawn into this enigma. Did the Vatican disclose everything Sister Lucia wrote down, or did they choose to shield the world from the most devastating parts of the prophecy? Was the vision of the bishop in white walking through a ruined city the complete message, or just a fragment of a larger, more terrifying warning about the future of humanity and the Church itself? Some who have studied Fatima believe the silence that has surrounded the third secret for so many decades speaks volumes on its own. They argue that if the prophecy contained nothing more than a symbolic vision, there would have been no reason for generations of popes and cardinals to keep it hidden from the faithful. Others believe the secret's power lies not in what it predicts, but in the questions it raises. Questions about faith, trust, and the challenges the Church has faced across the tumultuous 20th century. Meanwhile, modern crises within the Church and the world have only added fuel to the mystery. Scandals that have shaken the Catholic community, wars that threaten global peace, and a growing sense of moral confusion have led many to wonder if these are the very events the Virgin's final warning sought to foretell. As the decades pass, each new upheaval seems to breathe life back into Fatima's secrets, keeping the story alive in the minds of those who seek answers. Fatima remains a place of hope and fear, peace and uncertainty. Pilgrims still walk the candle-lit paths and kneel in the chapel of the apparitions, praying for guidance and protection. They come carrying personal hopes and collective anxieties, drawn by the same questions that have lingered for more than a century. What was the Virgin's true message? And have we been told everything we were meant to know? As we look back on this extraordinary story, we are left with a haunting choice: to accept the official narrative or continue searching for what might still be hidden. Perhaps the real lesson of Fatima is not simply about secrets or prophecies, but about the courage to reflect on our faith and confront the unknown. What do you believe about the third secret? Has the Vatican revealed the full truth? Or does part of the prophecy remain locked away, waiting for the right moment to be heard? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to KTK History for more investigations into the world's greatest mysteries and the stories history tried to forget.